Georgie, it's so great to be here with you today, and I so enjoy talking with you about these issues. You're an international leader in our understanding of the relationship between pain and emotion and physical well-being, and I am a big fan of yours. So it's a great pleasure to be here today and get to ask you a few questions about how you came to this work and your upcoming online course, which you're launching. So it's the first thing that I'm really curious about is what inspired you to first launch your training. You began all this back in 2010. And when you first started running your training that people would come in and learn about what you were doing, what got you going on that? Because you were way ahead of the curve in terms of our understanding of the relationship between pain and emotion. So what got you going?
Well, initially it was my own personal journey, my clinical journey, actually clinical as well as personal, with experiencing pain and never really fully understand what was going on. And so it took me just questioning why so many people were waking up with chronic pain or were coming to me for treatment with a prolapsed disc, and my very gentle treatments, their pain was resolving and they were avoiding surgery. Or they were doing something they normally did without any problem, and then suddenly they had pain. So often the symptoms didn't match the findings on the MRI scans, for example, as well. And so I was really trying to look for an answer. And it took quite a while, and a lot of reading and talking to colleagues from different professions. And eventually I came across the work of Dr. John Sarno. And eventually for me it was like an epiphany, and I read everything I could find about it, which was a lot less than there is now, I ended up just realizing this is huge. This is not just some little technique or something, and I was sharing his books with a lot of my patients, and the remarkable recoveries was making me realize I needed to look into it further. There was nobody doing this work in the UK or Europe, so in the end I contacted Dr. Sarno himself, and in 2007 went over and observed his work, talked to him about coming back and setting up my own program. So that's what I did, and then began to really start exploring what I was doing, and recognizing that I was still quite isolated. I ended up going back over to the States on a number of occasions to conferences to be able to shadow some of the other specialists who were developing in this field as well over there, and who've become great friends and wonderful mentors for me. For example, Dr. Howard Schubener and Dr. Dave Clark, who've been a great support for me right from the start. So the reason I started training in the end, there were a number of reasons. Partly that I was feeling quite isolated in the UK, and all my peer support was in America. And also I thought, well, I've ended up spending quite a lot of money and a lot of time and effort developing all this myself and learning it all myself, and having to travel over to the States to get to the point where I felt confident working in this field. As well as doing all the training that I'd done myself. And so I felt that if I actually started making it easier for others to get into this field, one, it would be easier for them, but also I'd have more peer support, and I would have other people that I could then refer onto over time. So that's what I started doing, because there was no training anywhere, and I felt the urge to make a difference, and I felt it'd be quicker to get the word out there if I trained health professionals who then went on to work with their clients, rather than just me working with individual clients on my own.
So now you're turning all of this that you've been doing into an online course for professionals. So tell me a little bit about how that came about and why you're choosing an online format.
Well, a number of reasons. It was becoming quite challenging with going around the country and even into Europe to run these courses, and with just 10 hours of office support a week. And it was a lot of hard work finding venues and marketing, and me being the only one to train everybody. So initially I thought, why don't I start training some of the other practitioners, and then we can have a team of us. And for various reasons that we started that, and then for various personal reasons on the individuals' parts, it never really got very far. And I remember significantly on one course, something happened to one of our elderly parents, and I just suddenly thought, what happens if I can't suddenly drop everything? And so the reason to move it online was twofold, business and personal. On the business side, it meant that we could make it more accessible because people were asking me if I would be moving it online because they couldn't get to the UK. So to make it easier for people to access it. To also be able to add more, because because it's online means that we can make it a more deeper course and a broader course for people to really develop their understanding. But on a personal level, we have 3 elderly parents who are getting older, and I was very concerned that what if something happens and I can't drop everything? And as you know, that's been happening this year. And so the fact that the training's online has been wonderful and made it so much easier for us to carry on with the training online, but for me to also take time and spend time with my parents.
So, Georgie, what are the main teachings within this course?
Well, it's split into 2 levels, actually. So level 1 is the introductory course. People find out a little bit more about the approach and the concept and the evidence base. And level 2 is the actual practitioner training section, where people can begin to start understanding about how to assess and treat people with mind-body syndromes. It looks at the current approach, the current understanding of treating chronic pain, which I have to say has been changing definitely. In the last 12 years since doing this work, it has definitely been changing with the advancement in the pain science studies and the understanding of adverse childhood experiences studies. So there's a lot more understanding about trauma, stress, and what's going on in the brain, and that pain really is in the brain. So we look at the current understanding and then challenge it with the idea with this. The introductory course is to get people to question their understanding, to question what they're seeing, because if they start to question, they'll be more open to actually wanting to find out more. So this is the introduction, really is about that, is beginning to show the evidence base for the need to change, the need now that isn't more widely accepted, that we need an educational and psychosocial approach, and that we do need to begin to start considering emotions and parts of trauma, which is the bit that's still not really widely accepted yet. So the idea is that we begin to help people recognise where the evidence base is for all this, and give them an outline of how we help people with our SIRPA approach, and be able to just start looking at some simple strategies and some little things that they could be doing with their patients, even just asking a simple question like, what was going on in your life when the pain began, which is really something that people don't generally ask. Or even the question, was there any time in your childhood you felt unsupported? So just a simple way of just beginning to see what else might be involved. And then the second stage is the practitioner training side, which is using a number of resources, videos and audios and PDFs, and reflective practices and some quizzes, and then being able to then go off and do some themselves. We have a forum where people can discuss things with each other, and we go through in much more depth about the understanding about chronic pain and about stress, what links with adverse childhood experiences, and we talk about various topics that we would include, like mindfulness and but also emotional awareness, and beginning to look at the links to the causes. We talk about all the different causes of mind-body syndromes or stress-induced pains, as well as the various manifestations and how we can diagnose or have them diagnosed if you're not a doctor, somebody who is able to diagnose. So, and then it moves them into this forum and a membership if they want to be able to really gain access.
So who do you consider this training to be for? Who should sign up?
Well, it's aimed at health professionals and health coaches. We say that they do need to have their own professional qualification and also be regulated and insured by their own regulatory body. This is because we are a CPD course and it's CPD certified, but we're not teaching them a new profession, for example. And the nice thing about this is that we can provide this additional support and guidance for them, and it provides them with a group of interested health professionals who can all discuss and things together. We have this ownership forum that is also included. So the first 2 months is actually free, that they can be included and start benefiting from the webinars that we have either in our field or allied fields. And that was the other nice thing about moving the training online, and one of the other reasons, because I kept being asked by the members who were wanting more support, really keen to have more support and guidance, and because of having to run around running all the courses all the time, I had less time, but was still trying to do that. So being able to move the training online has actually then allowed me to have that time to be able to provide a lot of support and guidance, and even with the business and marketing side of it, we brought in from other people, and social media, how to advertise their business with social media that we all need. And so it's enabled us to bring in a lot more and provide that community of interested health professionals.
So, Georgie, why do you think that this training is needed in the healthcare industry at large? What do you think you're bringing to the table that's been missing, and why do we need it in healthcare today?
I think because sadly, for so long now, for decades, we've been looking at the physical, looking at pain as being a physical problem, as pain being due to tissue damage, which we actually know now it's not, it's a perception, and that people can have severe tissue damage without any pain. So it's about recognizing that we need a shift, and thankfully the evidence has been moving towards that, and recognizing that people need to understand what's going on, need to understand even just the basics of pain science, and what's going on in their brain related to their pain, and how their fears and even their personalities can affect the pain. And that it's not just what's happening in our lives that can actually be creating the stress that can fuel the pain, but actually how we deal with it. This is very much how we're helping our health professionals actually teach people, definitely not to get rid of their pain, which is generally what they do. People will go for chronic pain treatment, and they will go and have a tablet or a treatment to get rid of their pain, okay? Or it will be generally to manage their pain. So very much the focus has been on pain management, whereas now the evidence shows that it is possible to recover from chronic pain. And so what we're trying to do is raise awareness of that, and for people to recognize that if we continue to just treat the physical body, we're missing out on so much, because it's been shown now that pain is not related to, for example, posture, structure, biomechanics, and we need to look further. We need to look at the psychosocial side and put more emphasis on it than generally is used, and begin to look at unresolved trauma, unresolved emotions, or even avoided emotions, because we're so busy all the time, we're not aware of how we're feeling. So the headache that appears, sometimes they'll relate that to stress, but actually other symptoms, if ignored and treated as physical, and that the underlying cause is not addressed, that's when it becomes persistent. There's a lot of research out there now really indicating the factors that can trigger pain, but also can cause pain to become chronic. And so if we can get out there and raise awareness and actually reach people before it becomes chronic, then actually isn't that going to be a help? And so when we've got people like physiotherapists, massage therapists, or coaches, quite often they're the early ones in, they're the one, or the GPs who see people before the pain becomes chronic. And although on the whole we're looking at how we treat chronic persistent pain, it starts somewhere, and often we can actually get in there and help with some very simple and self-empowering strategies. And it can, on some occasions, it can be very quick for people to recover, even if their pain has been for a long time.
You are, as usual, way ahead of the science. The science is now coming out to support everything that you've been saying for the past 9 years. That pain is really based on different structures in the brain that are formed over time by our responses to the pain itself. And I think what you do, which is so beautiful and helpful, is help people change their responses to pain. And I know that your strategies have been incredibly helpful for me. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So, Georgie, you've now worked with patients for so many years. How has this information that you have spent a decade almost learning and adding into the way that you work with patients, how has that changed the trajectory of patients' recoveries between now, the way you work with patients, versus the way that you were originally trained by working with just their physical symptoms? So today, working with their psychological thought processes and their trauma and their thoughts, in addition to the pain itself, versus just working with pain by trying to manipulate the body. How has that changed your patient's recovery and their trajectory toward well-being?
Interesting question. Well, for a start, I think initially the just treating the body, if we're talking persistent pain, so chronic pain patients, patients with chronic pain, then we're treating the symptom. So we're treating, and often they look perfectly normal because there's actually nothing wrong with that part of the body, and yet we're treating them. Now, I did have good results, I have to say, and how much of that is placebo, I don't know. But what I did find is with the chronic pain patients was that they were the ones that were coming back. Every few months they would come back. They might well recover well, but then would come back. And this is what I was like as well. I'd have one symptom, it would go for treatment, it would settle down. A few months later, I'd have a neck pain, that would settle. A few months later, sciatica. And so what I wasn't aware of was that there were triggers triggering that pain, because I blamed that on the pillow, waking up and cricking my neck on the pillow. It must have been that pillow, even though I'd slept with it for months or years. So really, I think before it was about management, because we're treating the symptoms, and it might have been recovery at the time, but generally something would recur because we weren't getting to the root of the problem. So with this work, what we're doing is we're actually recognizing that there's an underlying cause, and therefore it's looking at, as you say, the behaviors, the personality traits, maybe some past trauma, and really beginning to help connect the emotions with a trigger, or with the pain increasing or whatever. And when you start dealing with that, and then the patient begins to understand that themselves, because it's very much about self-empowerment, that's when they can begin to work with that. And that's when full recovery can occur. Now, obviously, you're never going to get 100% success rate, because we're talking about the mind here, and personalities. But generally, the recoveries have been, I can't even explain, because I never had patients who recovered as, for example, as quickly and as completely as so many people do these days, sometimes even from reading my book or one of the others in our field, and some with just a bit of advice. And it used to take sort of a few sessions, a few treatments, and then gradually people would symptoms of these. But this is about people becoming self-empowered and recognizing, if they wake up with neck pain, okay, what's going on in my life? What am I not dealing with? Therefore, it's they're taking responsibility, and they're able to then start working with that, rather than feeling they have to come to me to be able to then sort them out, and then it keeps recurring. So I think the difference is that, yes, people will still get the odd aches and pains, but often, unless they've obviously had an actual physical injury and then there's inflammation there, it's about them becoming aware that if they suddenly develop a pain, or an ache or a tension or something, and they haven't really done anything to cause that, what might be going on in their life? To do with that. So I think it is completely different.
That's wonderful. So in terms of your online course, what is the format and how will people access it?
Okay, well, it's online, so as you said, very easy to access, and it can be you can get to it through our SIRPA website, and we'll make sure there's a link on this. It's on 2 levels, as I said, level 1, level 2. People can buy them individually or together, and they can read about this on the website to find out more about each level. Actually, if you buy level 1 and level 2 together, you get level 1 for free. So we wanted to make it easy. We wanted to buy a level package. And then it's just following it. It's hosted on Thinkific, which is a platform that sells thousands of courses. So it's very simple, very easy to follow, and you just work your way through once you actually access it. And there are all sorts of different. There's the odd quiz to do. There's videos to watch, audios, PDFs to read, things to download, to print off. And then people just work their way through those. And when we get to level 2, then the practitioners who are working through that start their 2-month free membership. So that's when they can access the membership forum and talk to others going through and discuss cases, etc.
Right. So, Georgie, I'm just wondering, now that you know everything that you know, let's say you get up in the morning and you are having pain in your neck or sciatica, or one of your old haunting pains in your brain returns. You've been going through a lot this past year in your own family life, as you mentioned, and I'm just wondering, I know many of the tools that you offer. There are so many wonderful things in your toolbox. What's your go-to for Georgie?
Right. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, first of all, if I was perfect, and of course that puts pressure on us, if I was perfect, then I would be dealing with the emotions before I have the symptoms. But of course, that's not always the case. Okay. So yes, I'm normal. I have the odd symptom. The difference, I think, though, now is that I don't have any fear about the symptom when it comes up. And we know that fear fuels the pain. So there's no fear there straight away anyway. It's more of a, all right, what are you not dealing with now? Okay. My go-to is about recognizing the emotions. So I might be, if I don't know what it's about, which would be unusual, but if I didn't, I might just free write onto paper and write on what's causing this pain. And then just free write and let my thoughts flow onto paper, and generally something will come up and I can express that then and there. And then I would begin to be able to put it into perspective, rationalize it, look at what I can learn from it, what can I do to make it easier, etc. Or I might do an emotional awareness exercise where I sit and I could again ask the question, what's causing this pain? And then just sit and observe my body and just observe what's actually happening and let any emotion process. I suppose those are the main ones. And also, even just depending on how severe it was, I would be thinking, okay, how can I move things around so I can take a bit more time for me? So it's really just an indication I need to take time for me and sort this out. And generally it would last, I don't know, up to an hour, maybe a bit longer, sometimes a day or so, depending on what's going on. But that is a real indication for me, right? Self-care is required.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today and letting me ask you about this new online course, which I'm excited will be available for everyone who needs it.
Thank you, and thanks very much, Donna. I really enjoyed this.
Take care.